This podcast is brought to you with limited interruption by Rudy Luther Toyota. Whether looking for an exciting brand new Toyota, a certified pre-owned vehicle, or getting quality routine maintenance and service for your vehicle, Rudy Luther Toyota is the place to go. Rudy Luther Toyota, the southeast corner of 394 and 169 in Golden Valley. Subscribe to the podcast Beyond Politics. They host some of the biggest names and smartest minds. Beyond Politics is from a former Democratic congressman who helped ignite Barack Obama's campaign and a former campaign manager and political columnist. They go beyond the usual chatter on politics, news, science, and books. It's politics and everything beyond. On Beyond Politics, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Broadcasting live on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and in the evenings on WCPT 820 Chicago's Progressive Talk. It is the Matt McNeil Show for your Thursday. Good to be with you today. Matt and Patrick here, guest-free the entire 2 hours, including the local hour here in the Twin Cities. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. Patrick, how are you today?
Oh, not doing too bad. How are you today?
I'm doing well. It's the warmth of summer has rolled on in here. I will say I'm a little bit sad today. How many things with Shelley Duvall have you ever seen? Did you ever see The Shining?
I did see The Shining, yes.
The Shining was just amazing. And she was, although she was, you know, there's a lot of people who've rumored had been that the filming of that with Kubrick, Stanley Kubrick, actually was so traumatic for her, it created its reason why she left. It isn't, by the way. She didn't leave Hollywood because of that. But she did. She suffered from mental health issues, and eventually just walked away from Hollywood. Lived in Texas the rest of her life, and a very underrated actress. Nashville. If you ever get the chance to see the movie Nashville, she was in that. Quite good there. I'll also point out. All right, did you ever see the Robin Williams version of Popeye?
I know about it.
Okay. It's okay. So the thing about the movie, which is entertaining, is they basically got to the end of the movie and they ran out of money, and so the end is pretty abrupt. And it was going to be a much more grandiose end, and yeah, it kind of petered out there. I remember seeing Popeye in the movie theaters. And the thing, I mean, if you ever watch the Popeye cartoon, obviously there is you have to wonder, it's like, how in the world are you going to bring these characters to life? Shelley Duvall was fantastic as Olive Oyl. She was fantastic as Olive Oyl in that, and was very entertaining. In that film, I've always. That was, I think, such an accomplishment. It was funny because the movie was kind of despised because, there was that initial backlash against Robin Williams. It always happens. You get somebody who's up and coming. Jim Carrey was another example of that, who's really kind of changing the world. And, there's always the critics are quick to, and this is back when the critics really could determine whether or not a movie was or was not good. And they basically railed against Robin Williams and Popeye, and of course the way the movie ended, kind of people were like, what? We all of a sudden, and we're done. And yeah, so it kind of got a lot of grief. But Shelley Duvall was very good in that movie. She has passed away. She's 75 years old. Once again, in the 1990s, married. I think she married a guy from the band The Breakfast Club. And that's it. They basically left Hollywood. She went out, lived in Texas, where she was found. Robert Altman found her at a party, and she became kind of his muse. In a lot of the sense of it kind of really brought her into a lot of his movies, including Nashville. But yeah, kind of sad. I really did like her. That whole thing with Dr. Phil, where he tricked her basically into doing an interview back in 2016. Tracked her, oh, there, I'm here to interview you. Yeah, no, that was pretty horrible. So, Shelley Duvall passing away, so a little bit of a sad note on that one. Like I said, go see Popeye. I mean, the ending, it's kind of weird, but she's very good in that. She is very good in that. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. So I've got a bunch of things I want to talk about kind of off the cuff here. And I want to start with what I have been talking about the last few days, which is, needless to say, my mentality. And this has been my mentality. Yes, it was a bad debate. I think it's a mistake to necessarily replace Joe Biden right now unless there is a definitive health problem that has not been disclosed. Then, yeah, no, I don't think there's a problem. We just actually in the news here had the Irish Prime Minister, I think it was the Irish Prime Minister, saying, no, I stand by Joe Biden. The NATO stuff, I've seen plenty of speeches with him over the last 2 weeks where he looks very presidential. I don't see him stumbling and all this stuff. And there is this feeding frenzy with the media. And I'll get to the media a little bit later on because we need to take them down a notch. But there's this feeding frenzy with the media that's going out. It's like, is he not? George Clooney weighed in. Oh, my God. And I like George Clooney. I really do. I think Michael Clayton is one of the best movies I've ever seen, one of the top 3 law movies of all time. But, yeah, this is it. I have said this. With considering the threat that's across the aisle, Joe Biden, if he is the nominee, has my vote. If he is replaced, whoever the Democratic nominee will have my vote. That is the way I have said it. There seems to be a lot of pressure to push to get him replaced. But I will say this. It's kind of interesting to see where the polls are because 2 new just released national polls. And once again, polls have some big problems. And I've always said I think the polls are undercounting. They've ever since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, they've undercounted the Democratic vote by 7 to 15%. Undercounted it. So I think that whenever they say it's barely a Democratic victory, all of a sudden it's like, boy, oh boy, the Democrats won by 9. Where did that come from? Well, you basically bought your own bad press. Quite literally, you bought your own bad press. 2 new just released national polls taken well after the June 27th presidential debate show Joe Biden tied with 1 or more point ahead of Donald Trump. This comes after a new study released Wednesday found the presidential debate had little, if any, impact on voters' preference and showed President Biden retained more of his supporters than Donald Trump did. So let me repeat that line. Joe Biden retained more of his supporters than Donald Trump did after that debate. Washington Post ABC News IPAS poll released Thursday finds Biden and former President Trump in a dead heat in the contest for the popular vote, with both candidates receiving 46% of support. Those numbers are nearly identical to the results of the poll in April. So basically, the people are entrenched at this point. You either like Biden or you like Trump. But the more, and by the way, one of the things which is interesting, the more that even conservatives find out about Project 2025, the less likely they are to like Donald Trump. Why do you think he's frantically trying to distance himself from it right now? This is obviously counter to the narrative that's been pushed on. It's like, his entire base is eroded. That is the tone that we are hearing talked about this, not only from the national news media, but from basically anti-Biden Democrats who almost giddily are cheering on the thought of replacing him. And I have basically, once again, I'm voting for Joe Biden. If for some reason he is replaced, I'm not a frickin' idiot. I'm voting for whoever replaces him. But that's not the tone. I talked about this all week long. You can go listen to all these shows this week. It is basically, we talked about tone one day, and the tone is not, hey, I just don't think Joe Biden should be there. I think we should find someone else. It's, oh, my God. Oh, we're going to lose. Ah! And I say I have zero tolerance for that. I have zero tolerance for that. Grow up. Just grow up at this point. So I'm going to do what we should do. I'm going to give the anti-Biden Democrats the opportunity to kind of think about, what's your plan? Okay, one day, because once again, I think Joe Biden should stay on the ticket. I haven't seen, he had one bad debate performance. My God, did Jeff Stein have an absolutely outstanding visit yesterday, reminding us of the first Reagan-Mondale debate, and Reagan looked horrible in that debate. I forgot completely about that. He looked like he was done. And I remember there were, it wasn't nearly the feeding frenzy this is, but it was clearly he looked like he didn't know what he was doing. He bounced back in the second debate, ended up going out and, outside of Minnesota, he won every other state. So he has a bad debate performance. We've never in the history of this country, we've had a vice president replaced late, but we've never had a presidential nominee replace this late. So, anti-Biden Democrats, what's your plan? Now, the first thing you're saying is, it's not my problem. Yeah, it is. Okay, this is your problem. You can't scream fire and then act as if you have no idea why everyone's left the movie theater. It is your problem. You had better make sure you have a plan in place. And my thought process is there's a lot of Democrats calling for Biden to leave this race who are literally going to be the dog who caught the car. They have no idea to do with it now that they've actually got what they wanted. So this is your moment to get this plan in place. I've talked to 5 people I know who are anti-Biden Democrats who want him to step aside. I've asked all 5 of them, give me who your nominee is. 2 of them said Kamala Harris. One said Gavin Newsom. One said Gretchen Whitmer. One said Pete Buttigieg. And when I mentioned to the person for Gavin, Whitmer, and Buttigieg, you realize that they're going to start at $0. They say, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. It sure as heck does. So you don't even understand the playing field that you're inheriting if we get your way. This is why you don't want to, I just wanted Biden gone. I don't want anything else to do with it. No, you cowards. No, you cowards. You need a plan. What's it going to be? It better be Kamala Harris because she's the only one that can take over the war chest of Biden-Harris, and she has to be the top of the ticket. She can't be the vice president on that ticket. And then here's the other big question that you need to ask yourself is you're going to alienate probably 10 to 15% of the Biden supporters, the die-hard Biden supporters. And I want to hear from you what you're going to say to them to get them on board. And if it's something of the effect of, well, we just got to get behind the Democratic nominee now. The first words out of their mouth, then, why didn't you do that for Joe Biden? Hamina. That was different. I didn't like Joe Biden. I like this other person. You need to get behind them. No, you need to start working on that little nugget of a math problem right now. Let alone trying to make sure that if it's Kamala Harris, she's not kicked off of 3 or 4 state ballots, which is the threat that's going to happen out there. So, no, you guys, you've made this mess. If this comes to fruition, you'd better have a plan. Because if you don't, guess what? We're screwed. And that is on you. Take a break, come back. It's the Matt McNeil Show.
Coming out of my cage and I've been doing just fine. Gotta be down because I want it all. It started out with a kiss, had it in a blind.
It's the Matt McNeil Show here on your Thursday. Matt McNeil here, 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. Yeah, you've got 2 very big questions that I don't think a lot of you guys have even thought about answering. Well, 3, really. 1, how do you make, well, I guess it's still the 1 and 1A, 1B, because who do you replace Biden with? And once again, if your answer is not Kamala Harris, you're a fool. That would be 1B, because if you don't go with Kamala Harris, you've really got no chance at winning in November. And I'm dead serious. And nothing against any of the candidates being mentioned. You're starting at 0. You're sure, you'll make some money. You'll be plucky. You'll be a plucky little upstart, but you're not going to knock off Trump. There have been a few polls that have shown Kamala Harris, Well, we just had 2 polls I mentioned last segment that show Joe Biden still beating Donald Trump. Kamala Harris polls in 1 or 2 polls better than Donald Trump, and Hillary Clinton does too, which, I mean, I don't think she wants anything to do with this, frankly. Well, maybe I'm kidding myself. She basically is, she would jump at that again. I don't know. But you need to figure out who your candidate's going to be, and probably the one with the least path of resistance. And then number 2, you sure as heck need to figure out how you're going to get the diehard Biden fans, who are about 10 to 15% of the Democratic Party, who might just walk away from this election. How are you going to, hey, now that we've got this new person, we all need to get united. What's your answer going to be when they look at you and say, well, then why didn't you unite behind Joe Biden? And why are you demanding me to hold a standard that you yourself do not put forward? Because that's a little head scratcher how you're going to answer that question, isn't it? And like I said, if you say, well, that's not my problem, you're a bunch of cowards. You're a bunch of cowards who are just trying to create chaos, and you're worthless. So if that's who you are, get out of the way. If you truly do want to get rid of Joe Biden, well, you need to work on those 2 answers real quick and come up with a freaking plan, as opposed to, I wanted somebody else to do it. Because I can tell you another thing, too, and I'm going to take down the news media here in just a little bit. I guarantee you, there is going to be an abrupt about face, a neck-shattering 180 by the news media the second that Joe Biden is replaced, and it's going to all of a sudden become, why would the Democrats be so foolish to replace Joe Biden? If they actually got to that. Guarantee it. Guarantee it. Why would you do that? Same network who's saying, why are they keeping him? For 3 weeks now. They'd be the same ones. 952-946-6205. One of the things I've been doing is highlighting why the Democrats need to get united about something right now, because that's Project 2025. And I've been highlighting some of the things that have been kind of coming down the line here. Eliminating all unions and worker protections. Okay. A few years ago, on my show here in the Twin Cities, I actually had the head of the Carpenters Union because they were actually endorsing a Republican. And I looked at him and I said, you do realize that if that same Republican who says they love unions is the deciding vote to kill your union, they will proudly, prancingly run down the aisle to cast their vote to kill your union. You do realize that, right? Well, but, there are some concerns about social issues. Do you know why companies get exceptions and import workers from Oklahoma up to Minnesota to work on sites that are supposed to be union jobs? Is because Oklahoma has no regulations. Those guys are getting basically paid $8.50, $9 an hour. And they're shipped up here and they work, they have less worker rights because they're technically Oklahoma employees. So they have less worker rights. They're worked harder. They get less pay. I want you to look at that the next time you come across that at your worksite, union guys, because that's your future. If Donald Trump wins, that's your future. $25, $35, $40 an hour, you're going to be making $9 an hour. The minimum wage is going to go away. There's not going to be any. They're going to pass a law that says even cities like Minneapolis and Chicago can't pass a minimum wage law. They're going to insist that municipalities are overridden by the federal government, and that Supreme Court's going to back them up. So minimum wage is gone. The 40-hour work week is gone. You're not going to get benefits. You're not going to have health insurance. You're not going to have a pension. Come on, man. You can't be this stupid, guys. Well, maybe you can be, because I want to remind everybody that there's one guy in particular, the Teamsters president's decision to speak at the Republican National Convention, where Donald Trump is expected to win his party's nomination, has outraged a large swath of the members within the union. President Sean O'Brien's argument is that appearances in Milwaukee represents a savvy political maneuver, reportedly has International Brotherhood of Teamsters leadership muttering union members' most deplored four-letter word, scab. Teamster Vice President John Palmer went as far as to publish a scathing editorial Wednesday condemning O'Brien as a disgrace and Trump as an authoritarian leader comparable to Nazi dictator Adolf Hitler. And it's no surprise that Trump echoes language used by Hitler in Mein Kampf, writes Palmer, nor should we forget the labor unions and the leaders were among the early targets of elimination by the Nazi regime. If O'Brien is going to be satisfying his ego, he better, if he's going to pander and beg for the Republicans to abandon their anti-union policies, then the Teamsters membership would be better served if O'Brien stayed home. Nor is Palmer alone in his condemnation of O'Brien's decision. James Kerbeam, the national chairman of the Teamsters National Black Caucus, has reportedly said this: we will not allow the working class labor movement to be destroyed by a scab masquerading as a pro-union advocate. Yeah, they've turned on O'Brien somewhat. And I think they should, frankly, if you want to know the truth. This would be like the person who's going to be eaten gleefully going to have dinner with Jeffrey Dahmer. You know, it's like, well, but, you know, sure, he's a cannibal and all, but he has some great stories. I love sitting down and chatting with him. Come on, man. You can't be this dumb. And once again, the only thing keeping these minimal working rules in place are the unions you have around you right now. The labor unions, the teachers unions, the nurses unions, all of you guys, you're going to lose everything because once again, this is long game stuff, and Republicans are trying one last ditch effort to basically tank the entire system, take us back to the 1880s where it was a company town and you didn't have any rights and you didn't have any say whatsoever. And they had to do that. They have to get rid of the unions. And I will even go as far as saying football players, athletes, you know, the police. I know you guys think, well, they're not coming after us. Once everyone else is gone, they're coming after you. And, they might offer you a few extra bucks to go along with it. But they're coming after your unions, too. Because the entire concept of a union is a threat to these people. No, we should be able to tell you what you should do and not do. And if you don't like your job, well, that's just tough. That's your lot in life. That's why you don't get an education. That's why you don't get decent pay. That's why you live in, squalor housing and stuff like that. So, yeah, know what's going on here, because if you're a union and you're thinking about voting Republican, you're an idiot, because you're going to get eaten. It's the Matt McNeil Show. Broadcasting in the evenings on WCPT 820 Chicago's Progressive Talk, and in the afternoons on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota. It's the Matt McNeil Show on Thursday. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205 is the phone number. We need to call out the news media on what is going on here. And the insanely egregious nature at which the intensity which they are hyper-focused on Joe Biden after one bad debate performance, while at the same time outright ignoring what happened with Trump over this at the debate, with the Supreme Court ruling, the Epstein files, his lies about Project 2025, all these things, all of those things have taken place since the debate. Today, the New York Times, which I don't get anymore because I really think the New York Times sucks, and you should cancel your subscription too. I keep getting notices like, don't you want to come back? No, I don't. Nope, I'm not coming back. Well, I mean, was it Hal Sparks or one of the guys, maybe Bob Seska, made the point today that they apparently must have had enough people drop their subscriptions because suddenly out of the blue, they're like, hey guys, we're not just about Joe Biden, even though that's pretty much the entire first few pages. It's, it's the first few pages of our paper every day. No, we're going to put an editorial that we think that the Republicans should not nominate Donald Trump because, news alert, He's not a good guy. Yeah. Ugh. This minimal amount of effort to try to make it seem like they're both sidesing it. There should not be any doubt in your mind that the media at this point, especially, watch this. Watch what has happened. And they still have the audacity to claim. I mean, these are not Fox News and Newsmax and OAN. These are supposedly liberal news outlets in the New York Times and the Huffington Post and CNN, even MSNBC. And they're all just at a feeding frenzy with Joe Biden while outright ignoring Donald Trump. It's interesting. The Raw Story has an article about it. The intensity in which journalists have been reporting on the story, and more importantly, the consistency in which the journalists have been framing it, have led some to wonder if the news media as a whole is on a crusade to end Biden's campaign. Some think that journalists and newsroom managers are conspiring to bring Biden down as a means to increase the odds of defeating Donald Trump, whom they see as an existential threat to American democracy. Others think journalists are unfairly focused on Biden's age out of some warped sense of covering both sides, despite the fact that their perspective Trump's debate performance was filled with lies, hyperbole, bigotry, ignorance, and fear-mongering. But then as well, they do say, well, you know, it's journalists want to do stories that the public will find valuable and their audience will find interesting. So that's another reason. I'm not disagreeing with a little bit of that last one, particularly appealing to conservatives who generally don't read the New York Times or the Huffington Post. But no, the news media is definitely on a crusade to end Joe Biden's presidential nomination. Absolutely. I want to read to you. This is just a list of things. Now, once again, Joe Biden has one bad debate performance. Since then, he's had multiple other speeches and meetings where he has looked very presidential. As a matter of fact, there really hasn't been anything since that debate that has sent off a red flag. Now, he's got a press conference this afternoon. We'll have to see how that goes. But, you know, there hasn't been anything that has highlighted him as somehow incapable of fulfilling the role of the president. But that hasn't stopped them to constantly speculate, constantly. When was the last time you saw the news media hound Republicans with the ferocity that they have hounded Democrats for the last 2.5 weeks? Seriously, when was the last time you saw them ever chasing down politicians, demanding answers of a Republican? And frankly, I know enough journalists who will tell me straight to my face, but Matt, the Republicans don't want to answer anytime, so it's just easier going after the Democrats. They've told me that. Yeah, fair and balanced my caboose. So Joe Biden on that debate he sounded old and he had some verbal gaffes. Okay? Did you hear Donald Trump during that debate? He had pretty much the same amount of verbal blunders. The same amount. As a matter of fact, I want to go back to that earlier poll I mentioned at the beginning of the show where his supporters have actually backed away from him more than Biden's supporters have backed away from him at this point. Donald Trump, since then, well, in the weeks leading up to that debate and in the event he had yesterday, I mean, by God, or was it 2 days ago, Daily Show had the video footage of he's like, women are praying to the Lord about fentanyl. They're praying to the Lord. Aren't airports bad? Seriously, that was it. I'm paraphrasing it a little bit, but the dude is clearly not all there upstairs. Donald Trump is clearly got mental problems, does tons of gaffes. When was the last time you saw the Times, Huffington Post, any of these guys running? Joe Biden might have problems, but Donald Trump has a lot of problems too. Nope. Fox News, Newsmax, OAN, they won't even touch that story. On top of that, Donald Trump is a convicted felon. He's been found guilty of rape in a civil court. He is close buddies with Jeffrey Epstein and had close connections to him, including being on his plane to his island with underage girls multiple times. Used government to personally profit, stole charity money from veterans, badmouth veterans constantly, tried to overthrow the government of the United States. There was that little gem. He has been twice impeached. He lies constantly, easily proven lies. And now he wants to be a dictator, and his Project 2025 agenda will pave the way for the end of democracy, something that he says he doesn't endorse. But we even today have a brand new video of him at the Heritage Foundation gathering saying, "Thank you very much for Project 2025. I love it." I'm paraphrasing a little, but not much. He praised it and said that was going to be his map for his presidency. All of those things would be, should be enough to at least warrant some coverage, some level of equality on this, some level of, maybe we've done 2.5 weeks of wall-to-wall Biden coverage. Maybe we should mention Donald Trump outside of, it was so funny. Like I said, when on election night in England, even though the conservatives got wiped out, what was the New York Times one breaking news headline? Nigel Farage won his seat. Yeah, his party won like 5 seats total, something like that. Way out of power. But they completely ignored the fact that the liberals beat the conservatives badly just to focus on that. It's that kind of blind reporting that we are seeing here, which is really frustrating. It's not just this overemphasis on Biden. It's the fact that they are outright ignoring not just Trump for being Trump, but breaking news we've had in the last few weeks, which show that he is unworthy of being president. And not once have you seen, should the Republicans replace Donald Trump? So why? Because that is a legit question. Why is it there isn't that same level of demand? The same level of journalists hounding Republicans on Capitol Hill. Why not? And it's they're cowards. And someone needs to call them out. I will. They're cowards. They're cowards. Now, this is where they've gotten today is a culmination of what the conservatives did do to the news media of this country. By the consolidation, they cut newsroom staffs, demanded certain news gets covered, certain other news doesn't get covered, and that basically there was a narrative to the news, a conservative narrative. So there are news journalists out there I still love, that are really good journalists. Heartland Signal, the crew over at Heartland Signal does a really good job, and you definitely should be reading what they're doing over there. I would make an argument that you should probably be paying attention to the folks over at the Minnesota Reformer. They're covering a lot of good news that's just not getting covered anywhere else, which is, thank God for that. Dina Winter over there is an exceptional journalist, might be the best journalist I know of today. Andy Mannix is over at the Star Tribune here in Minneapolis, St. Paul. He's sensational. Gosh, a guy like that 30 years ago would have an entire news team reporting to him, breaking massive stories, 3 weeks, 4 weeks of coverage. Today, he breaks stories which are amazing, and the Star Tribune sweeps them very quickly underneath the rug. It's heartbreaking. The vast majority of journalists today are attacking Joe Biden because it's safe for them to attack Joe Biden. Not because Joe Biden's a worse candidate than Donald Trump. No, not in a million years. Joe Biden had a bad debate, made some verbal gaffes. Trump does that every time he opens his freaking pie hole. And then I listed all the other things, including trying to overthrow the government. He's a felon, the rape thing, the Jeffrey Epstein thing. No, Donald Trump is a far worse candidate for president than Joe Biden, but it's easier for them to attack Joe Biden. You see, if they attack Donald Trump, rightly so, what you get is MAGA Nation. You're just the left-leaning media because they're cowards and they don't defend themselves anymore. Edward R. Murrow would smack these guys around. These guys are like, oh, I'm sorry. Here's some anti-Biden story. Part of it is checkbook based. It's safe to attack Biden because if you say, wow, hey, Donald Trump was on Jeffrey Epstein's plane with underage girls going to his underage girl sex trafficking island, boy, oh boy, maybe we should report on that. And then all of a sudden, well, this major advertiser pulled their advertising, and this major advertiser pulled their... They think you're being unfair to Donald Trump when he went out to the child sex trafficking island with Jeffrey Epstein, so you better pull back on that. You see, that's how they do it. They're afraid of being called liberal, and they don't want to fight. And they're afraid that basically that if they report something, that might cost them an advertiser. So it's best to not even report on Donald Trump. That's the truth. They don't report on Donald Trump because they're afraid of losing advertisers. And the conservative advertisers love when you beat up on Joe Biden. That's what we've got here. And the advertisers are so important that even supposed left-leaning organizations like the New York Times and Huffington Post and CNN and MSNBC can't stop with the wall-to-wall anti-Biden coverage because they want some of that sweet, sweet anti-Biden money. That's what's going on. And the second that they replace Joe Biden, those same outlets will immediately say, how could the Democrats be so stupid to replace Joe Biden? He was their best chance at winning. Because once again, it's safe for them to attack the Democrats and Joe Biden versus actually doing their damn job. Journalism today is an empty shell of what it used to be. It's the Matt McNeil Show. It is the Matt McNeil Show. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. Jeff is in Cambridge, has been holding forever. Welcome on in, Jeff.
Yeah, this is a topic from a little bit ago, but I just can't understand these Trump voters. You're talking about the union people supporting Trump.
Yeah.
And it seems like they have two choices. Either they're voting hoping that he's lying, hoping that he's not going to do what he says he's going to do, which is kind of an odd way to vote, or they somehow feel that, it's not going to affect us. We're not going to get hit by it, whatever this bad stuff is.
Well, and Jeff, I think, and thank you very much for the phone call, I think you're right on both accounts. It's the same thing, really. They're like, well, I'm going to be fine. It's like when I was talking to a conservative I know out in western Minnesota, and when I was talking to them, it's like, you do realize they want to get rid of the public schools. Well, the first thing out of his mouth was, well, not my kid's public school. That means those inner city schools, kind of pseudo-racist. But that was his thing. I said, no. Your school, too. And he was insistent, that his small town, 120 student K-12 school district was somehow going to survive the purge of public schools, because that's wholesome America, Matt. They don't have a problem with our schools. Sure. Okay. Good luck. And yet that's the guy that when it does happen, he's like, what? They lied? And this is why I keep saying, can we eliminate, in England, they just threw out all the conservatives after their lies ruined their country. And it's going to take decades for them to fix what the conservatives did in that country. It's going to take decades. Can we there's still a doubt whether Donald Trump will ever hand power back to anyone else ever again, or the people around him ever allow a legitimate election ever to happen again. But even if they did, can we just eliminate the destruction of America and the decades of rebuilding that will hurt us all because of Donald Trump? Can we just avoid that? I mean, I'm all for that. Speaking of people that... Okay, so today, the monthly inflation rate dipped in June for the first time in more than 4 years, providing further cover for the Federal Reserve to start lowering interest rates later this year. The Consumer Price Index, a broad measure of costs in goods and services across the U.S., declined 0.1% from May, putting the 12-month rate at 3%, around the lowest level in more than 3 years. So, inflation is coming down. That's good. Once again, it's one of those things where if you're just accusing Joe Biden of doing something when it goes bad and things go good, and you're saying, well, he had nothing to do with that, well, you're just being a hypocrite. I personally, once again, the Consumer Price Index, this is about we're a capitalist society. That's about the companies setting their prices, and they basically react. If people stop buying their products because they're getting too expensive, they start reacting to it. And they get shrinkflation, all these other things. I don't necessarily believe the government should be setting prices in the private markets, but people that complain about Joe Biden and inflation generally seem to think that they should. And by the way, once again, it's not inflation if the company is having record profits. That's just plain old-fashioned greed. All right? Now, as you can imagine, today I've had to beat back multiple conservatives who were posting, I don't care what it says about inflation. Groceries cost me so much money. I can't believe the amount of I can't afford gas. Now, first of all, you probably need to talk to a financial counselor because it sounds like you can't spend money to save your butt. But one of these guys, I actually went up and looked at his page, and there was a picture of him with his brand new tricked out pickup truck, and then a picture of him with his sleeve tattoo, which those aren't cheap. And it all of a sudden hit me how many times, really since the economic crash of 2008, I have heard a conservative say, I can't believe the cost of groceries. I can't believe, and by the way, I should say this, not necessarily conservatives. I've actually heard some people who are Democrats say this too. I can't afford medical care. I can't afford groceries. I can't afford gas. And less than 60 seconds later, they're talking about their new tattoo or their new tricked out truck or their new piece of sports memorabilia they bought for $800 on eBay, or the tickets to a game or a concert, which, I paid extra for these so I could get up close. Or the $150 bottle of special liquor that I have here. Let me show it to you so I can brag about it. The unnecessary toys that they have, a jet ski or a second jet ski or a dirt bike. Or they'll come in and tell us, like, I went to the casino again this week and I love going to the casino. And we need to have a wake-up call in this country. I've always said this because when I lived out in rural America, there is no vehicle I had a pickup truck for a while, and this was supposedly one of the fuel-efficient ones. It was a B2600, Mazda B2600 when I had it. And this was supposedly one of the more fuel-efficient ones. It was one of the least fuel-efficient car I've ever owned. And it still was better than a lot of other pickup trucks that are the gas-fueled pickup trucks. And I've always found it hilarious when I'd see some conservative at a gas pump with a 6-tire pickup truck with an extended cab, which they don't use for work. They use to basically try to pick up their daughter's friends. And they basically drive that around and look at me driving around. I got my new decked out truck. Look at it. Look, it's so pretty. And it's like, you're driving basically a refrigerator. That's how fuel inefficient that car is. And you're complaining about the price of gas. Stop it. If I look at your vehicle, if you're driving if you're driving a Hummer, don't complain about the price of gas. Because you're driving a vehicle that's notoriously poor gas mileage. Dear Lord, if you're complaining about groceries or health care or gas, and I can you either yourself within 30 seconds talk about these excess spending that you've been doing that you don't need to be doing, or I can see on your social media page you're doing all this spending, that's not Joe Biden. You need to look in the mirror. But I highly doubt you will. Just an observation to end the show today. Chicago, we will talk to you tomorrow. Minneapolis, St. Paul, Hour 2, coming up next. Hour number 2 of the show here on your Thursday. Good to have you with us. Matt and Patrick, 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. By the way, and some guy come at me on one of the social media pages during the break, and he's like, hey, we got to replace him. He's bad. All right, once again, I'm going to fall back to what I said last hour. All right, you get your way. What are you going to say to the diehard Biden fans to get them on board? And remember, if you say, we need to get behind the candidate, they're going to throw that back in your face real freaking fast. So what are you going to say? Now, I'm going to vote for the Democrat no matter what. But if you're sitting there right now and saying, I'll never vote for Joe Biden, it's going to be kind of hard for you to come back and say, well, everybody should unite behind the candidate. Because the pro-Joe Biden people, they're not going to be too easy to kind of win back over. Now, if Joe Biden does you a big solid, which then, he'd be willing to do, then maybe you might be able to pull that off. But, once again, you're going to need Joe Biden's help, even if you, and that's another thing, and maybe I'll talk more about that tomorrow. You're desperately going to need Joe Biden's help. You're going to be like, Joe Biden needs to go. Joe Biden needs to go. Joe Biden's horrible. Joe Biden's guy's awful. Ugh. And then all of a sudden, the second, if he does step aside, Joe Biden needs to get out there and encourage his voters to back up Kamala Harris. Joe Biden shouldn't be answering your calls. So he's so selfish now that we overthrew him from the nomination. He doesn't want to help us. You do you, man. You do you. Guys, like I said, there's a lot of people right now that if Joe Biden steps down, they're going to be the dog that caught the car. They're not going to have any idea what the heck they need to do at that point. Quick little side note. Ruben Rosario, the columnist here in town, apparently died on Wednesday at the age of 70 at Healthview, University of Minnesota. Complications from a condition there. I interviewed Ruben Rosario twice on this show, both times an exceptional visit. I was very happy to interview him. He was always a pretty good journalist, and he will be missed. So all my best to his family and friends, several of the people that he worked with. Ruben Rosario passing away at 70. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205 is the phone number. The Minnesota Department of Health is investigating a case of parasitic illness, cryptosporidium. I know you've heard of cryptosporidium, right? It's a nasty one.
I have not, actually.
It's a bad one, man. It's one of those diarrhea-based ones. Delightful. Which has been recently sickened some people who swam. Okay, they swam at Great Wolf Lodge in Bloomington, and they still got sick? I mean, do you know how much? God, I remember I swam in there years ago when the kids got taken down for a birthday party or something like that, and it was like 90% chlorine. How is anything surviving in that? Yee. State health officials have created an online survey in efforts to learn more about the suspected waterborne illness outbreak and prevent further outbreaks. And officials who are seeking survey participants who have been ill, as well as participants who had not had any recent illness, collect information about water park usage, other potential exposures, and recent symptoms. Great Wolf Lodge reports that cryptosporidium cases were identified in a small number of guests who stayed at the water park in mid-June. A hyperchlorination process has been carried out to ensure the water park is safe. Oh, that's not the water ride you want. Okay, I'm not going to say the line. They said, They put in the adjective watery. You don't need to do that, Bring Me the News. You know, there are sometimes you can just go with the word. You don't have to add oomph to diarrhea, man. You just, God. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the illness is caused by a microscopic parasite, which usually causes just diarrhea beginning 2 to 10 days after the exposure. So scrub up, kids. Who was the person that went in there? How bad were they, like in a petri dish? Do they have like speaking of which, My Pillow. We have talked over the years. Oh, Mike Lindell is a favorite topic of ours here at AM 950. I have said, I have pleaded, I had begged for him when he started off with this, the election was stolen stuff, to just go on out there, either put forward his evidence that he had proof that he was it was indeed stolen, or profusely apologize, even grovel. I think I used the term grovel a few times. Grovel. I said to grovel. And maybe, just maybe, you might get out of this with your company. You might. Not a surprise, Mike Lindell did not listen to my advice. And, yep, things are getting worse. MyPillow is now facing possible eviction of its outlet store, warehouse, and primary manufacturing plant in Shakopee. It's a threefer. Just months after the Minnesota company was forced out of a different warehouse for failing to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in rent. Yikes. An eviction notice filed in Scott County says the company failed to pay rent for the months of June and July on the 374,000 square foot property at 2101 4th Avenue East in Shakopee. MyPillow owes its Pennsylvania-based landlord $447,603 according to the court filing. A hearing is set for July 23rd at Scott County District Court. In March, the company was ordered by a Scott County judge to vacate another Shakopee warehouse at 4701 Valley Boulevard South after the property's landlord showed the company owed more than $200,000 in rent. MyPillow was sent at least 4 default notices over 6 months before it was evicted from the property. The company's office headquarters are in Chaska. Lindell, the company CEO, told the Star Trib on Wednesday, MyPillow recently settled the payment issue and they won't be kicked out of the streets. So did you pay them? Because that would be settling the issue. There's some confusion there because one group bought it from another group. We don't have the same landlord. It was waiting. We would not pay. Now, if we're going to pay, of course we're going to pay. An attorney for the property's landlord did not return request for comment. The case remains open. So if he has covered it, they have not filed the paperwork to not go to court here later in July to deal with this. I feel sorry for the people that work for him. Because there are people that probably work for him that are not diehard conservatives. Some are, for sure, without a doubt. But there are people that are working for MyPillow that's their job. And it takes no... I've said this multiple times. I take no pleasure in knowing that those people are definitely going to get hurt by this. I feel sorry for you, but there's only one person you should look at to blame for this situation, and that's Mike Lindell. He went down a path, and once again, you're not going to be able to, Donald Trump's not going to be able to pardon his way out of this. These are civil trials. This is not criminal trials. This is why, Rudy Giuliani is going to pay that money whether he wants to or not. It's why who's the guy that said the Sandy Hook kids were all fake? Alex Jones. Alex Jones. He's going to have to pay. He doesn't really have any other option. And it was interesting looking at Giuliani. He's basically gotten to the end of that they are going to be liquidating all of his stuff. That he is not going to have anything left by the time they're done because he owes so much money. Because for some reason, these idiots thought that you could just accuse people of doing something they didn't do, and not a minor thing either. I mean, we should say, what was that, the 200 mules, the 2,000 mules, whatever that movie was. They're getting sued right now, and they're going to owe that money because they basically said this one guy who was legally dropping off ballots for his families was actually a vote mule that was dropping illegal ballots. And without any evidence or any proof of a crime, they accused him of crime in a widely distributed movie. And once again, for everyone out there, if you didn't pay attention, the entire basis of that movie has been proven to be an absolute lie. They didn't have any whistle. They finally had to come clean in court, and they said they had no confidentiality agreements. They had no whistleblowers. They had nothing. They had made it up. And so they're going to lose millions and millions and millions of dollars. James O'Keefe, Project Veritas, that's what got them into trouble. Is, they went out there and they tried to put this out as this is reality, and that's what's killed them. There is this wedge of the right that feels as if they can actually alter reality. And Lindell, I'm stunned. If you go back to that whole thing where the cyber symposium that he had at the Corn Palace over in South Dakota, Jesus. If you go back to that, he was so confident that gibberish code of zeros and ones that he had proved something, and he never once at any point ran it past any real expert and said, I'll give out $5 million. Was it $5 million? Was it $5 million he promised on that one? I think it was $5 million. $5 million if anyone can prove this is not legit. Guy goes and does it. Conservative does it. He's a conservative. He's been fighting him ever since because at some point he thought he could alter reality. And he can't. If this company is kicked out of their current warehouse, their second warehouse in this year, I really do feel sorry for them because unless they're doing it in Mike Lindell's garage, I don't see how in the world they're going to get anyone else to rent them space. If you've had two people, if this comes to fruition, if Mike Lindell has said this is just a big misunderstanding, what's exactly, he said that MyPillow recently settled up the payment issue and they won't be kicked out on the streets. Great. But if that's not true and you do get kicked out of this, no one's going to rent space to you. You do realize that, right? You can't pay your bills. Why would I knowingly? Where was it? He got kicked out of the one place earlier. This is in March. The company was ordered by a Scott. So in March, he was vacated the building. So in March, he vacates his first building. He gets into another building. 2 months later, June. April, May. Well, okay, so 3 months later. 3 months later, he's not paying rent again. He didn't pay rent in June. He didn't pay rent in July. That doesn't sound like a company that can function. This might be the end of him. And if that's the case, I don't know what this might be why he's begging for a job within the Trump administration if Trump wins, is because he's soon is going to have no job out there. But Symantec, I think is it Symantec and Dominion are still going to take him for millions and millions of dollars, and he'll never get out from underneath that. I feel sorry for his workers because those people are just making pillows. Those people are just, trying to make a living. And many of those people worked for that company for years and years. And that company's not even going to exist anymore. And it's not going to exist because Mike Lindell failed at making pillows, although, some of the reviews you see on that, Consumer Reports didn't exactly give them the biggest thumbs up you'll ever see. But because he thought he could warp reality and turn a made-up story into reality. And I can't imagine if you're a worker there that you're going to be looking at Mike Lindell with anything but kind of a lot of distrust after that. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. We'll take a break. Come on back. It's the Matt McNeil Show on your Thursday. It's the Matt McNeil Show on Thursday. Nice to have you with us. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205 is the phone number. So we had that. Remember last year, there was their poll out by CNBC of the best states to do business. And we made a lot of conservatives' heads explode when it was announced that the state of Minnesota last year was number 5. It was number 5 in the nation as best states to do business in the country. The thing which they didn't stay in the top 5, and I know that Republicans are going to they tumbled down the chart. No, they went to 6. They went to 6. Minnesota is number 6. Virginia is the number 1 state this year. North Carolina came in number 2. Texas is at 3. Georgia 4. Florida 5. Minnesota, then Ohio, Tennessee, Michigan, Washington. Virginia votes Democrat. Georgia votes Democrat. Minnesota votes Democrat. Michigan votes Democrat. Washington. So it's basically an even split of the top 10, with the number 1 state being a predominantly Democratic state. The thing which is also interesting about this is, yes, we're not 5, we're number 6 this year on the CNBC poll, but one of the arguments that Republicans are going to try to make is things are so much worse in Minnesota that the Democrats are all in charge. Well, not really. We're still there. And as a matter of fact, there is, okay, so this poll, here's what they ranked them on. All right, and I'll give you Minnesota's ranking on these things. Infrastructure, that's, obviously an important part of business. That's number 5. Workforce, 19. Kind of surprised we're that low on it. That, workforce is in these other categories, basically just workers. And I'm presuming that it might be a case where Minnesota falls a little behind here is that in places like that, there's a lot of people that are they've got a great workforce because they basically, there's not a lot of benefits, there's not a lot of opportunities, so the people there, they have them. Here in Minnesota, not only do we have blue-collar jobs that are out there, and God bless you, you're working one of those today, we also have a lot of jobs in Minneapolis, Minnesota as well that require degrees and stuff. And so that might be part of the reason why it skews a little bit. The economy, Minnesota was at 24 there. Florida apparently has the best economy. Yeah, they're so good every time a storm hits them, they can't fix their own problems. Cost of doing business, which is, none of the top places did really well on that one. Minnesota was at 35. Technology and innovation, we were at number 12. Business friendliness, we're 22. And if you're listening to this, like, how did we do so well then? Well, number 4. We're number 4 in the ranking of quality of life. And it was at that point I looked at the 5 states that finished above us. Virginia, North Carolina, Texas, Georgia, Florida. Quality of life. I mean, quality of life. So this is the life you're going to have outside of your job, right? This is your kids go to school in the local school districts. You've got local parks. You've got entertainment, fun things to do, stuff like that. Minnesota, 4th best in the nation. I'd make an argument, number 1 in the nation, number 1 in my heart. There you go. So this shouldn't matter. I mean, the quality of happiness of the worker should matter a little bit, shouldn't it? Virginia, of the top 5, had the best quality of life. That was at 19. Number 2, is North Carolina. That's at 32. Texas was at 3. The quality of life in Texas is 50. Now, I don't think we should be surprised. They just had a hurricane hit them, and they can't get their own power back on again because it's a state. They've got a government there where the only thing they concern themselves about is the corporations and the business people and the executives and screw their own people. And yet, once again, another great example of this in Texas. I have multiple times talked about the Minnesotans who said, I'm leaving this Democratic hellhole and I'm going to Texas, and they're back a year later. Holy God, I didn't realize how good we had it up here. I remember the one guy talking about the schools. He said the schools were just unbelievable. My kid got a locker that didn't have a door on it. So obviously, no one's scoring lower than Texas. Georgia didn't do very well, 40, and Florida, 38. Now, I will make an argument here that one of the reasons why quality of life is so bad in these states, now Virginia is not as bad, but once again, that state has been becoming more and more Democrat, and it now is a relatively solid Democratic state come election times. One of the reasons why the quality of life scores so low in these states is because of the mentality of the South. Now, I lived in Georgia for a few years as a kid. I've got family down in South Carolina. I'm down there on a fairly regular basis. So this is not something I have read. I have seen it faced. You go down there, and you will go to a town, and all of a sudden the roads on one side of town are undrivable. They're undrivable, while the other side of town, the roads are ornate. And what you get is that the state, the city, the county, whatever the jurisdiction is, they're not spending any money on maintaining the community because it's this whole thing of the post-Civil War South where basically, fine, you might be freed slaves, but you're not going to get any help from us. And that generational bigotry towards the black community has just become, that's what they do. You just do not help the people of your community. That if you want a school, you have a private school, and that's where you spend your money, and so they gut all the education funding down to zero. That if you want a road paved, well, we can't just be paving roads for those people, so they basically pay no money. They don't do any road maintenance. They don't do anything like that, and for them, their roads are nice because they're paying exorbitant costs out of pocket to have a private company come on out and pave and maintain their road. Something that would be a lot cheaper if they just basically paid a simple tax on it and the entire city would benefit. But because the idea of the other people in the city getting the benefit that they're getting so infuriates them, they'll spend 5-6 times as much money to basically, just to show it up to them. Parks, dear God, can I tell you how many times I have talked to people that have moved here and they're like, I cannot believe how nice the parks are. Go to the South and look at the parks. Ugh. I mean, just your local community park. The one down the street. The one that if you had a kid, you would probably take him down to. You'll be lucky. First of all, you'll probably be lucky if any of the equipment on the park has been updated within 30 years. Most of it is updated via fundraisers for one specific piece of equipment. Like the Kiwanis will put out a jungle gym, or the American Legion bought a slide, 20 years ago that's still all damaged. And granted, you go to some of these exclusive areas, private areas, they're paying a lot of money out of pocket to have a private company come up and maintain a park for them. But that's because they don't want to help anyone else. So when you look at these numbers and you look at, 32, 50, 40, 38 for quality of life, it doesn't surprise me that those are based in the South. Because the entire thing is about not helping your fellow neighbor, not helping your fellow man, because that's just societally what's happened down there from post-Civil War. Fine, you're free, but we're not going to help you at all. God, reading about it was a farmer's market down there where they basically threatened black farmers that tried to get anywhere near the white farmers market back then. And even when like white crops had bad years, they still would collude and coordinate and basically lowball the prices from the black farmers to prevent from paying them the fair market rate. I mean, really disgusting stuff. But that's who these people are. Shouldn't quality of life of the worker matter? I mean, don't get me wrong. I imagine these companies down in Texas and Florida and stuff, they're living in gated communities. Their lives are great. All their employees' lives suck, are horrible, horrific, comparatively to Minnesota. But the fact that they could still get a 50 and ranked that high, Texas could be ranked 50 and be the third best state for business, tells me how little. This is not a quality of worker, the quality of life for the worker. This is not a poll that looks at what the overall product is. It's clearly just a poll to gauge business, just for the business environment. Screw the worker, screw the people. Can they make as much money as they possibly can? Yes. And even with those disturbing and warped applications, Minnesota still scores number 6. And yet we also have a really good quality of life up here. So it sucks to be all you guys, but we're number 6. We're number 6. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. We'll take a break, come back. It's the Matt McNeil Show on the Thursday. AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, the Matt McNeil Show. Good to have you with us today. 952-946-6205. So I think this is going to be one of those next topics where I think a lot of people that listen to this station probably are not going to be on my side on this one. And I know this is what we're supposed to be. We're not supposed to be a rubber stamp. But I'll get through the story, and I'll explain why I feel the way I do after I get through this. Privacy advocates and lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are raising concerns about the Mall of America's use of AI-fueled facial recognition technology. The expansive shopping and entertainment center says the tool will help keep customers and staff safe, but critics argue it presents privacy and civil rights concerns. The mall has made several public safety changes in the wake of gun-related incidents in recent years. Police, retail stores, airports, and sports arenas across the nation also have ramped up an adoption of facial recognition and other forms of biometric surveillance. The mall announced in late June that it's integrated advanced facial recognition technology into its security system. The goal, MOA said, is to help its staff identify persons of interest, a category that includes everyone from wanted criminals to missing children. The system, made by a company called Corsight, Corsight, scans the mall security video feeds and looks for matches to persons of interest in a photo database. These people of interest photos are uploaded by staff, and security video isn't stored if a match isn't identified, the mall says. While MOA says the technology is over 99% accurate, critics are worried about false positives, especially for people of color. The first issue that we have is that there's a problem with accuracy. A policy, this is Munira Muhammad, a policy associate with the American Civil Liberties Union of Minnesota. It's not always guaranteed that technology will work. State Senators Omar Fateh and Eric Lucero, legislators who are polar opposites on most political issues, issued a joint news release slamming Mall America's decision. They called it a direct assault on privacy. It creates a clear potential for racial profiling, harassment, and false arrests. Fateh called on the fellow legislators to regulate or ban this alarming new technology as soon as possible. At 5.6 million square feet, our officers cannot be everywhere at once. MOA Vice President of Security Will Birmingham said in a statement, the technology will allow us more quickly to do what we're already doing. The MOA said security guards won't act and alert from the system alone. In a statement, the mall said it plans to use up to 3 layers of human visual review. The Bloomington Police Chief, Booker Hodges, told the news, and that this officers won't make arrests without the human checks and balances. The story out of Axios. All right. Now, I'm not going to dismiss the very legitimate concern of profiling, because we have tragically learned that racial profiling doesn't really do a damn thing. I want to be very clear, I've talked about how I'm not sure exactly how much we can depend on AI. It's a technology, I think, that is it has potential. Let's put it this way: 90% of the monetary aspect of AI right now is about trying to create digital boyfriends or girlfriends for people online, for make-believe relationships, and basically corner the market on the home modeling industry, whether that's R-rated, X-rated, whatever the case may be. That's what they're seeing. All these people that are out there on whether it's OnlyFans or Instagram, making as influencers, making all this money by showing a little skin here or there, or showing off some dude showing off his abs, and they're like, you know what? If we can create something that's more reliable and, moldable to individuals' desires, guess what? We'll take all that money. And so that's what they're coming for. That's what AI, the grand promise of AI, has been subjected to, basically TNA pics and porn. And there you go. But it does have some applications. You were not going to put this genie back in the bottle. The Mall of America has had some problems. And I think if not for, hey, I have been very critical of the Mall of America for allowing some sorts of protests that are feel-good protests to happen, but slamming the door on protests that don't happen, especially for an open facility that has received taxpayer dollars. I'm not a big fan of that. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about whether or not you go to the Mall of America, which, once again, if you don't like this technology, well, you don't go to the Mall of America. And that problem's solved. I mean, it's I get there is this vague line that exists with the Mall of America, whether it's private property or publicly taxpayer subsidized facility. That is a blurred line that the Mall of America itself seems to jump across whenever it's convenient for whatever their circumstances are at that point. But regardless, I mean, if you don't like this technology, they're telling you they're using this technology, you don't have to go. It's not like there aren't other shopping options in the Twin Cities. We still have 3 of the Dales. We still have a few other shopping malls that are out there. Galleria is still going gangbusters. You can go to a Walmart, you can go to a Target, you can go to a Home Depot. No matter what, you still have your shopping options, more than a plethora of them to choose from. But you just, that's one thing. We don't like it when you have to walk into a mall and there's 6 cops at every entrance with a dog watching everyone going by, and the racial profiling happens. I think we can all agree that that's not a police state we like. This seems to kind of be able to get rid of that. Now, once again, going back to the AI thing, is the system foolproof? Well, if it's not, Mall America's opening themselves up to a lawsuit because they're misidentified, and that's something that even the Bloomington Police Chief seems to be acknowledging when he says we're going to have, it won't act like an alert on the system alone. They'll use the 3 layers of human visual review. So basically, that 3 people are going to look at this image, look at the whether it's a missing person photo or a wanted photo, a warrant for arrest photo, something like that, and verify it's the same person. And if the implication here is if 3 people don't sign off on it, well, they're not going to do anything about it. All right. If that's the case, you're putting in caveats to keep yourself safe. But whereas people look at this as an intrusion, I, to a point, look at this as an optional place you don't have to go if you don't want to go. I mean, you want to go to an amusement park? There's Valley Fair. You don't have to go to the Mall of America. You want to go to the aquarium? The Minnesota Zoo's got an exceptional aquarium in it. Sure, there's a few restaurants you can't find anywhere else than the Mall of America. I'm not going to deny that. But there's nothing that says you have to go necessarily to the Mall of America. I don't have a problem with this. Once again, you got to work out the kinks. You got to make sure that there aren't getting false positives there. You've got to make sure, it's there. If there is somebody that's got a warrant for their arrest from, say, Topeka, Kansas, and they basically have eluded police for a while and they show up at the Mall of America and it IDs them, I think that's fine. I think it's fine. And I got to admit, I'm somewhat stunned by this under the argument, too, that you don't think this is already happening. This biometric stuff isn't already happening everywhere you go. Only in a lot of places, it's being personally honed to determine what products they want to market to you and appeal to you. Oh, it's telling me I want jelly beans. I love jelly beans. How did it know? That sort of thing. Here are your coupons. Here's some instant savings. We're going to pop up on your shopping app. That stuff's been going on for a while, and it's hard for me that if you have not been upset by the level of interference that we're getting on something like that, once again, for me, I look at the Mall of America here, I would much rather have this system in place than a litany of police at every entrance, trying to, with the real potential of racial profiling going on with the human element. I don't know. I get it that there are going to be some people that are going to look at me and say, Matt is, pro cop, anti-freedom. No, I have no problem with freedom. I have no problem with freedom whatsoever. I will go to the Mall of America because by what they're saying, once I walk in the door, it scans my face. I don't have any warrants out for my arrest. Now, they're saying they're going to get rid of the photos. Whether or not they do, I guess that's a question. You want a photo of me, slack-jawed looking at a new iPhone or something like that, knock yourself out. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you what, don't even take that picture. Come on down, take a picture. You can take a bunch of pictures with your phone. Just follow me around. I could care less. I could care less. That's what floats your boat. Knock yourself out. But I can understand if you feel as if the safeguards are not in place to prevent racial profiling, but I guess, is the problem then with the Mall of America, or is the problem with someplace in, just randomly picking a place in Michigan, say Detroit, where someone has an arrest warrant out for them in Detroit, and they just happen to walk in the Mall of America? Is it the Mall of America's job to basically say, if it identifies someone saying, well, that person's wanted for arrest for something in Detroit, we shouldn't do anything to stop them from shopping at the Mall of America? I don't know if I like that idea. I would much rather, the thought of me being in the mall with my family, if they're going to basically, if they can find out someone's there, but we don't, we're not going to, use that information. I don't know. I don't have a problem with this. And maybe that's considering you have, the extremes, upset about this. Maybe that's the point. Is I'm in the middle. I don't see that this is this is a bridge too far. Now, once again, this has always been a slippery slope. When they put cameras on the highway, when they put license plate scanning technology in police cars, when you put shot spotter that's going on out. Their technology has been advanced over and over and over again to keep us safer. And at this point, considering, I mean, we were talking the other day about the guy up in Crookston that got shot by a cop because the cop basically, even though it sounds like the guy was unarmed, he just shot him. I don't know if it was convenience or what, but we keep hearing of these cases where ill-advised decisions by law enforcement leads to tragedy. So I look at it different than a lot of other people would, because I look at it as removing the possibility of the racial profiling to a point. And once again, you can make an argument, and I think there's a very legitimate argument, can be said that nationwide our judicial system is still, damaged to the point where, and racially, biased to a point to where that there is an abundance of minority people that are going to be identifying this, and that's not fair. Granted, if your argument is the technology might not be well enough to where it can identify people and might falsely accuse some people of being criminals when they're not, 100%. And if they use this technology and they go through this 3-person approval system and they still arrest you wrongly, well, there's your lawsuit. Good luck. Enjoy the money you're about to get from the Mall of America. But I mean, you're more than willing to savage me. You're more than willing to attack me. You want to come at me on this? Fine. You're more than welcome to do that. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205 is the phone number. I don't have really a problem with it. I really don't. Because I said, if you wanted to stop this, you needed to go back. You need to jump in the DeLorean and go back to about the 1960s when they started using surveillance cameras and stuff like that. Because the second that we started doing that, this, as technology advanced, this was only going to be something that became more inevitable. And that's just the reality. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. We'll take a break, come back. It's the Matt McNeil Show.
Baby, it's hard inside. You're running across my mind. I was twisted, I was over it. Saying I never believed in us.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Good to have you with us today. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. Yesterday, I misidentified something. I said there were 2 stories where we had police shooting and whether or not it was legit. And yesterday, the reason I brought it up yesterday was because of the Crookston one. We found out it doesn't sound like there was a legit reason to shoot the guy. I misunderstood. I couldn't remember what the other one was. The other one was the case of Jamie Ann Crabtree, who was fatally shot by officers in North Branch. I think it was in May or during an incident in June. The 36-year-old mother was killed in June. She was allegedly drunk, suicidal, armed during the incident when officers Kyle Miller and Dwayne Southworth arrived at the scene. The footage released this week shows the officers arrived to find Crabtree sitting on a patch of grass on 3rd Avenue and Elm Street and ignored commands from both officers to drop her gun, at one point yelling, "I will not." Southworth is heard shouting, "Hey, put the gun," before Miller yells out, "Pepper ball," and fires several pepper ball rounds towards Crabtree, who then screams. Why did she scream? Well, she was just hit with multiple pepper balls. Southworth then opens fire with his rifle with more than a dozen shots fired between the two of them. Wow. The BCA investigate states that squad's dash cam footage indicates Crabtree began to point a gun at the officers, though it's not clear from the body cam video. Well, okay. So we just had the Amir Clark case where he was shot in the no-knock warrant in Minneapolis. And the entire argument that they made, they said the body cam, he was pointing his gun at us. We had no option. Well, we just had the civil trial, a federal civil trial, point out, not Amir Clark, I said Amir Locke. We now have the federal trial saying, wait a second, the judge has seen the footage. It doesn't look like he was pointing the gun at anybody. You guys need to pay. So once again, we have a story from law enforcement was he was going to kill us all. And the judge in the second case that's actually examining the evidence saying, no, they didn't look like he was going to do that. You say the dash cam video shows this woman was about to unload rounds into these officers, which required them to shoot a dozen rounds each into the woman. Or a dozen rounds combined into the woman. More than enough rounds to kill anybody. Forget about Die Hard. You get shot, you're down. You get shot twice, you're probably there's a decent chance you're not going to make it. They shot her 12 times. Now, granted, some were with pepper balls, but okay. Crabtree fell to the ground. Okay, you have just shot her with a gun, not just pepper balls, but with a gun. For the next 15 minutes, officers kept telling her to roll away from the gun, which was by her side on the ground. They wanted to help her. She kept saying, or she was heard saying initially, "It hurts and help me." Okay, so if the gun is on the ground and she's been shot, what in the F are you taking 15 minutes to go over there for? Dear Lord, it's clear you want her to roll over. She's got bullet wounds, for God's sakes. She's not going to be, and she's actually saying, help me. And you guys are saying, not until you bleed out. Well, they didn't say that. They're not saying that. But their actions sure said that, didn't they? They did not say that. I want to clarify. They did not say that. But their actions sure did. 15 minutes, you've shot her. The gun's on the ground. She might not be able to roll over because she's been shot. They finally approached her, found her lying in the grass, unsure of where she was shot, placed her in handcuffs. The footage cuts off there. Well, thank God you got the dead woman cuffed. She was pronounced dead at Lakes Regional Emergency Medical Services. Both officers placed on leave. The husband, Nicole Williams, told Star Tribune that he had been struggling with mental illness. Critical the way the situation was handled because he told the officers she was suffering a mental health incident and wanted to commit suicide by cop, and they seem to have obliged her. Scary. Native Roots Radio up next. Have a good one. We're back tomorrow. Till then, see ya.